And last season was our highest regular season viewership in 4 years. So we're doing fine from a viewership standpoint. I mean, I hear the narrative, and I think it's nothing new. You've been around the league for a long time, Shaq. It's a bit of a sport to pick on the league on occasion. I get it. We got to respond to the critics as well.
NBA Commissioner Adam Silver made a guest appearance on the Big Pod with Shaq, where he was asked about the NBA ratings and viewership. And Adam Silver proceeded to downplay the current NBA ratings. Listen to it right here.
Commissioner, there's a lot of talk about viewership, whether it's up or down. I'd like to hear your point of view of that. And you think we'll ever get consistently the same views like we got on Christmas Day?
Well, first of all, we're about even with last year right now in terms of our ratings. We were down initially in the season. We were up against the World Series. Obviously, there was a national election going on, which was driving a lot of viewership towards politics. But now, after we had a huge Christmas Day, as I said, we're up on ESPN and ABC. We're down a little bit on our other networks, but we're roughly even for the season. And that's roughly even with last season. And last season was our highest regular season viewership in 4 years. So we're doing fine from a viewership standpoint. I mean, I hear the narrative, and I think it's nothing new. You've been around the league for a long time, Shaq. It's a bit of a sport to pick on the league on occasion. I get it. We got to respond to the critics as well. But I think the fact is, part of the reason for the change in the new television deals is that one of the advantages of the NBA is that we have a very young audience, an audience that advertisers like, an audience that influencers like, but they're not watching as much traditional television that they historically did. I mean, it's interesting. You're younger than I am, Shaq. You're still like I'm now in that official older demographic, in that something like 70% of primetime viewership is comprised of people 55 and older. You got a few years to go. Adam's got a longer time to go. But young people, they're watching an enormous amount of screen time, but not traditional television.
Right.
It's social media. Social media broadly described, videos on social media, certainly streaming services, YouTube.
Your views on YouTube, like cut-ups of games, get like 10 million by the next morning. This younger generation is watching the 10-minute version at a crazy amount. Like, those numbers are staggering.
No, it's a great point, because by almost any measure, there's never been more engagement in the NBA than there is at this moment. No time in our history. And I'm not just talking about globally. I mean, when you look at it as a global league, absolutely, it's not even close. But even domestically, but people are consuming our games in other forms. It doesn't mean that it isn't part of my job to find ways to get our fans or potential fans to watch more games live. I mean, I think that's very important for the health of the league. And you began this conversation around storytelling. Part of what I think we can do better is not just tell the larger stories about players and their lives and off the floor and all that, but then the nitty-gritty, what YouTube, streaming, all these different channels allow us to do. Your podcast, frankly, allow fans to better understand the game.
Now, Commissioner Silver touched on several topics that I thought were important, and these are things that I've talked about before. See this video over here if you want to hear my original thoughts on this topic. Now, for all the surface level thinkers who just want me to reiterate the same NBA ratings are declining because people take too many threes narrative or because there's load management, y'all can click off right here. This is not for you. You're better off sticking to your little echo chamber in the middle of the internet, a little circle jerk over there where people just repeat the same shit over and over again. There were three important things that Commissioner Adam Silver touched on, and we're going to break them down bit by bit. Number one, he said 70% of primetime viewership was comprised of people who are 55 years old and older. Number two, he said younger viewers watch NBA content and games primarily on social media, streaming services, etc., essentially alternative services other than cable TV. And number three, he said that the worldwide NBA game is larger than it ever has been, and there is more quote-unquote engagement. So let's touch on the first part. Adam Silver talks about primetime viewership for NBA games, similar to the ones that just happened on Christmas Day, having an audience that is 70% people 55 years old and older. Now, for reference, the median age of an NBA viewer is 37 years old compared to 50 for the NFL and 57 for the MLB. So it obviously makes more sense that they would have older audiences watching primetime cable games because they're used to watching cable. If you're a 50-year-old NFL viewer, you know that every single Sunday there's going to be a bunch of games on primetime cable, whether it's Fox or NBC, what have you. So it makes it really easy for the audience to find the games that they want to watch at any single time because they know when the games are going to be and they have easy access to get those games as well too. And this was exacerbated even more so from the fact that the NFL only had 17 games in the regular season. And then when you get to the playoffs, it's a tournament style do or die situation where if you lose, you go home. So it makes every single game even more important compared to a longer 82 game season in the NBA, where a lot of these games just might not be important at all. You could lose a string of 2 to 3 games and it might not mean anything in the grand scheme of the NBA season. And then you get to the NBA playoffs where it's a best of 7 series for each single bracket within the tournament as you move up. So in the NBA, effectively, there's a lot more room for error, and this makes the stakes seem not as important or not as dire, especially in the playoffs. Side note, this is most likely the #1 reason that the NBA decided to implement the in-season tournament as well. They probably wanted to create a tournament-like feel, similar to the NFL playoffs or the excitement of the NCAA March Madness tournament. Now, even though the median age of the NBA viewer is 37 years old, it's estimated that around 40 to 45% of the NBA's current audience is around 18 to 34 years old. And these people don't necessarily consume the game by watching it on cable television. This could be for a couple of reasons. This could be because they're cable cutters, they only stream via apps, and if you're even younger than this, you're most likely watching clips from the games on TikTok, well, not anymore, Instagram, Twitter, or probably just flat out watching the games every single night on illegal streaming websites. And quite frankly, I think this is the NBA's biggest mess up because why is it more convenient to just find an illegal stream than to find it on cable or to find it on a streaming service? Like, it doesn't make any sense that in the modern era, it's so hard to find NBA games, sometimes even in your local area. But I guarantee that if you factor in all the illegal streams of people watching NBA games every single night into those cable viewership numbers, that the numbers would be up quite dramatically. I would bet money on it. Now, in terms of growing the game larger worldwide, Adam Silver is absolutely right on this as well too. Worldwide, the NBA has never been more popular and more well-known than it ever has been in its history. And part of that is because of the internet. Obviously, the internet broke down international barriers, but it is what it is. And I guarantee that if you travel abroad, go to Italy, England, Japan, Argentina, who knows where, if you ask them who Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson is, I guarantee your ass is going to get a blank stare. But if you show them a picture of LeBron James, Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, I guarantee they're going to be a lot more familiar with these people, which just shows the global reach that the NBA has and the popularity of the game worldwide. Now, while I do think there's a couple things that the NBA could do to improve its viewership, the main thing being a more balanced game when it comes to defense, allowing hand checking back in again, and cutting more deals to be able to stream NBA games on streaming services. Like, there's no reason why the NFL should have had games streamed on Netflix before the NBA did. There's no reason why. I think if they can work on these key things primarily, then they have a pretty good shot at improving the NBA viewership, especially as some of the younger demographic and the viewers continue to watch the game, continue to grow with the game, and continue to grow older and grow their purchasing power to be able to spend money on the game over time. Now, with all that being said, we should ask, is Adam Silver a good commissioner? Is he the right man for the job? Well, that probably comes all down to the perspective of the person. If you're an NBA player, you probably love that Adam Silver gives players a larger voice, more power over their careers as a whole, and you definitely love what he's done for your bank account because as a contract worker, which is what the NBA players technically are, you've made more money than the previous NBA eras before you, with some max players now being on contracts where they will make more in 2 or 3 years than Michael Jordan made in his entire NBA career. And on top of that, NBA players make more money on average than any other major US sport, with the average NBA salary being just under $12 million per year. They might actually have the highest average salaries out of any professional sporting league in the world. Now, if you're from an older generation, pre-2010s, late 80s, early 90s, you probably think that Adam Silver's done a shit job because the game doesn't look or feel the same way it was when you grew up watching it. Teams are jacking up 43 pointers per game. There's no more hand checking, and we're going to do a video on hand checking. We're going to do a deep dive later on this year. And the game is less physical overall, and it leans more offensive, which probably doesn't appeal to your traditional view of the game or your nostalgia. If you're someone like me and you're in the middle, you probably think he's done just okay, because Silver is essentially tasked with taking the NBA through the largest media transition it's ever had to go through in its history. And to navigate through a new media landscape where the world changing through streaming and the internet, it's a tough thing to do. It's not easy at all. Just look at what the record labels had to go through in the early 2000s when Napster came out, or when people started downloading on LimeWire or ShareBear or whatever like that. It wasn't until Spotify came around that the music business started to make money again from their actual music. But from my perspective and what I see based on the data that we're given, we're in the exact same situation with the NBA. The NBA is trying to transition into this new media streaming era while also trying to keep their old core audience that's on cable at the same time. Their younger viewership isn't watching on cable at all, and out of convenience are most likely watching the majority of the games on illegal streaming sites, which obviously don't count towards the ratings at all. But as commissioner, it's your job to look at the data, figure things out, get the viewership back on track, and get the public perception of the NBA back into a more favorable position. Anyways, I want to know what you guys think about Adam Silver's take on the current NBA ratings. Do you agree? And do you think that the NBA should look for a new commissioner? Sound off in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, share the video with friends. We'll be back with another video soon, and I'm out.